Is the mic hot? All right. So, for those of you in the fashion industry, your icons and rock stars are really well known. They're surrounded by media attention, they're on television. What you have before you is 4 of the rock stars of the jewelry industry. They do not have a media circus. They spend their careers fighting with a material that doesn't behave like fabric, and a lot of energy trying not to finance the retailers who carry them. So it's a different experience for our rock stars, but when it comes to art and design, these 4 are exemplary, as are all the members of the organization they belong to. Before we launch into the discussion of the project, we do have a debt of gratitude. And it's to thank the Platinum Guild, whose members are here today. I think Kevin Riley's out there somewhere, and Jenny Luker, is she here? Jenny couldn't be here. The Platinum Guild is well known within the jewelry industry as working to not only promote the use of platinum in jewelry, but to help people understand how to use it. They donated the platinum for this project. And it's easy when you're in an industry and suppliers and providers are giving you things, you just assume, well, that's what they have to do because they want the business, right? But what I've learned in 20 years of being in the jewelry industry is that the generosity of the Platinum Guild is actually in their DNA. They don't give because they want to get something back. They give because that's the kind of organization they are, from their leader, James Courage, all the way through to every member who works in the organization. So we really are grateful to you for the platinum. Oh my God, Kevin's going to talk to me later about that. For the platinum in this project, but also for everything that you do for the industry because you believe it's the right thing to do. So each year, the AJDC group chooses a project to work on. And it's a project that has constraints. And as an outsider looking in, I've always been very excited about the project, not just because of what it yields, but because of what it allows these guys to do. We've talked a lot the last 2 days about designers solving problems. And that's what, in their design roles, they do all day. Every day. They run businesses, they solve marketing challenges, they sell to retail stores, they drum up business, they get to their benches and their drawing tables in the wee hours of the night. They solve problems 365 days a year. The AJDC project gives them an opportunity to just go back. Of course, it's still in the wee hours of the night, isn't it? But it allows them to do design art just for the sake of the art. The only problem they're solving is staying within the theme. Everything else they do comes from their own ability to express something or their desire to express something. And they'll be able to speak to that much more eloquently than I can. But that this group of people together does a project every year since 1995 is phenomenal. It also has gifted it's gifted us with a body of work that is unbelievable in its scope and beauty. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is this year's project, which is called Transformations. And all of the designers here were working in platinum and whatever other materials they chose to achieve that. So the first part of this session, if I can advance this thing without bringing up notes and all other kinds of things, there we go, is just going to be for each of these talented folks to describe what they were thinking of and expressing, or whatever they want to share about the piece that they created. So Susan, make sure you grab a microphone, and you're first.
Okay, I'm first.
Sorry.
Oh, yay. Hi. First, I would like to say that the Platinum Guild actually chose our theme this year. So that was a new twist for the AJDC. We have a list of theme ideas that we've had ongoing for 20 years. We have a committee that comes up with an idea every year and presents it to the group and votes on it, and then we are pushed ahead into that theme. In this case, Platinum Guild said we would like to donate the medal to the group for the second time, because we did this in at the year 2000, at the turn of the century, with Platinum Guild. And they said, but this time we'd like to choose your theme. And I was working closely with Kevin on this, and I kept thinking, oh my God, I wonder what we're going to get. And then we got this great word, transformation. And I think we have extraordinary work by the entire group. Of course, now, myself, as a designer, every year when we get our theme, I work on a personal level because that's the nature of my beast. I'm always trying to say something through my work. So when we get the theme, I go to work on what's been happening in my life and how can I express it through that theme. So this piece in particular has been an emotionally healing piece for me, because last December, through DNA testing, I discovered that my biological father was someone other than whom I thought he was. So that was a life-changing transformation. So I decided to use this piece as a way to express what I learned about my new biological father and letting go of my other father, and it's also confusing. And not only that, I have new siblings in my life, 4 of them, who I have challenged myself to meet this year. So the only thing I can tell you is that my biological father raced hydrofoil boats after the war. He was a pilot in the Navy. And so this piece is about water, about transformation. The 2 pearls are representing myself and my biological father, also representing the dark and the light, the enlightenment of the truth that I received this year. And so on this photograph, I'm not sure, yeah, you cannot see. Is this the only photo you have of this piece? Okay. If you were to twist that ring around, and I actually brought this piece with me, so anybody who'd like to see it, I'd be happy to show you later. There is a fish on the side representing Lake Havasu and the Colorado River. And also, I call this Time and Tides, reflecting over all the years and the evolution of this story in my life. And that's pretty much it. So that the platinum itself represents the light, the truth. And for me, it's a whole new world this year. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay. Okay, there you go.
This is a great project for me because I look forward to this every year because I do a lot of work for my clients, and it has to be what they wish. I make jewelry for my line. This is something I can completely think out of the box. But one thing I'd like to thank the Platinum Guild for over the years. I probably would not be in the position I am without their competition. Over the years, the Platinum Guild has been very kind in sponsoring competition. And for a designer to get recognition in the industry, it is very expensive. But by the coattails of the Platinum Guild, I've been able to get my name out and expose much greater than I could have done by myself. So I want to thank you for everything you do for the designers besides these projects. The inspiration on this is my own career has transformed. That was in my mind when I was thinking about this. My work has really changed over the years from when I started. I wanted to keep it organic because I like nature. A great influence in my work is nature. MC Asher was somebody that I really admire, and I looked at books and pictures. That was the first part of designing. I tried to do that, and then after hours of trying to make that work, it didn't. And I fell back to what my comfort level is nature. The beauty and the beast. A caterpillar is not the prettiest insect in the world, but the transformation into a butterfly is something beautiful. I incorporated the feminine body in it because to me that is beauty. So I tried to incorporate the feminine body, the emergence of the butterfly, the openness of the cocoon was to show more of the butterfly. The difficulty was, how do I design this project when there's really two phases of this transformation? So the difficulty for me was figuring out how to incorporate the transformation and show both of them in as beautiful as I could. So that's why that cocoon is open, so you can see the whole body. I wanted to keep it organic, so the bale is coral. So I was able to put something into this that was organic. I like blue, and that's where the inlays are, is the lapis. And I tried to make it as organic as possible and as true to nature.
Thank you. You're next.
Me?
Yep, you.
First of all, I think Susan's story is quite remarkable and very unusual to hear it. And it's a pleasure sitting next to you.
We're probably related. I hope so.
Moving along. Is my project up there? Yeah.
It is.
I attacked this simply as a project. I didn't really relate it to anything personal, but I viewed it as a challenge to try to transmit what the word transformation meant. And, you know, bright minds think alike, so I picked a butterfly as well, just like Mark. Went in a different direction. And I tried to be as factual as possible in describing what was going on, which is the birth of a butterfly starting from a leaf dropping in the forest, to the transformation to a caterpillar, to the transformation into a cocoon, and eventually the beautiful butterfly. And the tree trunk you see there is really represents the forest and the environment in which all of these other things live. But there was nothing very dramatic about this other than meeting the challenge and to try to make something that was pleasant to the eye and that actually something that really somebody would want to wear. Very simple.
There's something ingenious in Jose's piece, which if you're not a jeweler, you may not understand it. He left a piece of the wax there. And the wax is an essential part of making jewelry. We carve in wax before we make it in metal. And so to me, every time I look at this piece, I am so delighted that you left some of the fundamental construction in the piece.
Well, it's a collaboration between a lot of people. Of course, the tree trunk was originally made in wax, as you described. The caterpillar and the cocoon were actually items that I drew and then utilized a carver to carve the animals from raw material. The butterfly itself was made in many, many different parts. And if you were able to look in the back, you can see how they all connect together. There's very, very little solder applied to it. Everything fits like a puzzle. And the white butterfly, other than I needed to do something in platinum, is also a real butterfly which normally grows in Colombia, totally white.
Goodness, back, back. And now Whitney's piece, much larger than Lisa was able to show you by holding up her pamphlet. No, it's fine.
I, for one, would love to echo Mark's admiration for the Platinum Guild. One of the first awards that I won was the Platinum Guild, and another challenge, like you've issued us this year. Whenever I get a challenge, in this case, a limited supply of platinum, I always try to make the biggest thing I could possibly make with it. And so the technical challenge was to try and make a very large brooch out of a very small amount of material. So this is actually raised as in a hollowware technique and all hammered in place to get the nice curvature. The photograph doesn't show it so much, but there actually is quite a lot of three-dimensionality to this piece. And another thing is that I work almost 99% in platinum. In love with the material, love the cleanliness and the sharpness and the clarity of the material. So most of the time in jewelry, you're trying to minimize the amount of platinum used to make the piece as affordable as possible. So in this case, I just threw caution to the wind and tried to make the largest piece I could find. So that was a technical challenge. And then the stylistic challenge was to try and transform the most precious material on Earth into a material that was pretty much day-to-day. It's not a precious material. It's actually synthetic raffia. So I'm trying to make that transformation between a beautiful, curved, sleek, seductive form into a more rustic, tactile form. And the crossover is that transformation.
I love the fact that anytime you get a group of designers together, and you know that I am not a designer, I live my career in service to designers, but you get them together and you will get several different thought processes and motivations and approaches right around the same project. And I think that's what's exciting to me about design, is that it is so expansive in its possibilities. How did this project, this transformations project, compare in your minds to other projects that you've done as a group in the past? You know, is it any of your favorite? Do you each have a favorite project? If it is, what was it? You know, how you guys do a project every single year, and they must stick with you. You want to hand Mark the microphone? We've got two.
Well, in my particular case, what's fun is I definitely do have a style, and architectural and nature is very prominent. When I look at one of these projects, I try to do something that if somebody looked at it, they wouldn't know who the designer was. And that's, when the projects are shown in Vegas, and if I'm by there, I love to have see what the reaction of people. To me, it's a reaction. I think one of my favorites was I did ice was the project. Design something using ice as your motivation. Iceberg, I thought of the Titanic, and then that threw that one out. That didn't work. And then I came up with, I like the idea of doing an ice cream bar. And it's a replica of a Haagen-Dazs bar. And there's a bite mark in that, and those are actually my teeth. I actually bit into several of them until I could find the one I liked. I took it to a friend of mine that was a lapidarius, and I said, "This is what I want you to do." And he says, "That's crazy." And but I don't think if anybody looked at that piece, they would know it came from me, because it was completely out of the box. So that's what I enjoy about these projects. I enjoy we get together for a retreat once a year. Many times we bring the projects to the retreat, and then we discuss it among ourselves, what our idea was in coming together. And it's what's fun for me is working with these other designers in our group. There's 34 of us now, and I'm always excited to see what each person comes up with, to see if we can recognize whose work it is.
So it's interesting that you brought up the ICE project, just as a distinction. My ICE project was a empty ring jewelry stand with some carved crystal that looked like water that had formed on the table. And the title of the piece was, "It was here a minute ago."
Impressive. I didn't do ice. I defected.
So can you sometimes opt out of projects? Does not everyone do every project?
Whitney always tries to get away with doing nothing.
The projects have been going on since, I believe, 1990. Well, you said how many years. Yeah, but I remember our meeting in Wyoming, Jackson Hole, was our first retreat, and that's when we came up with this idea. We should do something that we all are challenged to do. And we came up with a few. I think our first was Mona Lisa, which was so bizarre. We weren't allowed to use jewelry or any precious metals. It was a Xerox copy of the Mona Lisa. We all got one in the mail. And we had to adorn her. And we could do whatever we wanted to that Xerox copy. You remember that, Jose? And then we ended up at an auction with Cindy. She was doing a fundraiser, and we brought all of our Mona Lisas, and one retailer purchased the entire collection. And I don't know his name, but it's somewhere on display in the United States. And so we lost that project. And then we continued doing these auctions every year with Cindy. So
That would be Cindy Edelstein.
Cindy Edelstein, yes. Missing her, too.
Always missing her.
So year after year, we had a new theme, a new challenge. And so where was I headed with this? I just wanted to say that we now keep them, but yes, thank you, because we were selling them for fundraising, and we realized after about 5 or 6 years, our best buyers were other members in the group. So like I might buy Whitney's piece one year, and Whitney might buy your piece, and it was so silly. And so eventually, yeah, really, why are we doing this? So then we realized we have something very, very important going on here. And what was playful in the beginning and remains playful today for us as artists, still we realize that we have a collection of over how many pieces now?
It's about 250.
Oh, I think it's more than that. I think it's...
There's 150. There's 150 of these pieces on display at the GIA.
Yeah.
If you're in Carlsbad, the pieces were here in New York a couple years ago at the Forbes Museum.
And there are pieces here in New York now. I just went yesterday morning to the GIA, and you will see some of our pieces there on permanent display from the design collection that we donated to GIA. It's the first designer collection donated to the GIA, was the American Jewelry Design Council. So anyway, the cool thing is that this collection has become an embodiment of work that represents the art of jewelry design as it broke through the industry in the 90s, 80s, 90s, and through the turn of the century. And here we are today, still as a group, building these unique pieces that have become a museum collection that will, now we have to determine what we're going to be doing with these, because we have vowed to one another we will not sell the pieces. So this is a very important collection. We actually didn't realize we were putting a mark in history. And that's the really great thing that's happened, I think, with the American Jewelry Design Council.
I think that's very true.
And one of the things about the American Jewelry Design Council is we were formed as an arts organization, not a trade show or a trade organization. And so these projects give us that freedom to go outside of our normal production or our normal jewelry making lives, and produce some things that were that further the art of jewelry.
Well, and I was going to ask you guys a question about that, because Mark, you said you intentionally designed something that doesn't look like your work. And so you guys yet you all have very distinctive designer DNA. So how does that affect you as a designer? How does it help you along your path to do that kind of a stepping away?
Well, it allows me to step out from what I normally do, and that oftentimes will translate into my work. Not so much this particular piece, but there's other pieces that I've designed that has influenced a line of jewelry that I will make. If I win an award in some other area, pearl competition or spectrum, I usually take that DNA out of that and try and incorporate it in my line. But to back up one thing, our organization is, one of the reasons I got involved in this organization is because jewelry is wearable art. And part of the movie yesterday was to show that there's more to it than just an ounce of gold or an ounce of platinum. And you can speak, and Jose can speak on this better, it's to promote jewelry design and mentor new designers coming in to this business. It's gotten so mechanized that the designer doesn't seem to be as important as it was. And part of the goal of our organization is to give back to help new designers pursue this career path. And Jose and Susan have been in this organization a lot longer than I have, and I think they've seen a lot more of the influences of our group.
I think we all see the challenge, not so much in fashion, because fashion, I believe, is art-based always. You know, that's the inspiration. But with jewelry, we have struggled forever with the intrinsic value versus the art of it. So if you take a painting and you put paint on it, it becomes a masterpiece if that talent is in the paint.
Nobody asks you how much the paint costs.
Correct, it's valueless. But what we are challenged with, and I started in the 70s in this business, early 70s. I'm old. And so, you know, the challenge was that how can I afford to, as an artist, validate my art through the intrinsic value of the materials I'm using. So I have this great idea and I want to create it, but I can only afford, let's say, silver and copper, whereby the design itself deserved maybe a higher level of value in the materials. So there's that problem. The other problem is when you get into the industry and you are creating amazing pieces, and the jeweler that comes to your booth and they want to know how much it weighs. And it's like that's not even the issue here. I forgot to weigh it. And frankly, I even forgot if this is made for a man or a woman. This is a work of art. Anybody could wear this. It's a non-gender, valuable piece because of the art. And that's the hardest thing that I have seen in our industry over the years, is defining a jeweler who's also an artist, and it's okay. And this is the guy here. He's been forging this path for years. And but that's a great challenge, and we still face the same challenge, especially now with all the new age metals that we must consider working with.
Well, and Jose, your voice on this is so important because you design in your own name, but you've also designed for others. Sure. You know, so talk to us about forging this path.
You want to know about the designing for others portion?
Or defining the designer as an artist within a jewelry industry that often doesn't want to pay attention to the art. They don't always get it. I put you on the spot. I've seen you do it over the years. I don't know if you have the words to go for it.
Trying to get you to, well, first of all, whether I'm designing something for my own collection to sell with the brand name on it, or whether I am designing as a special project for an individual who wants something made, the thinking process in making the piece is the same. It doesn't really matter. It's just a different direction that you want to go on. I have always enjoyed doing the work of designing something for someone because it takes me out of my commercial part. I don't have to think in terms of how many of these can I sell, but rather I'm just making one piece for one person, period. And there's a certain freedom in that, because you can go a little crazy where with your own collection, you have to be careful to make it so that it is not unsaleable, which happens to a lot of us many times. And the other thing is just the interaction with a client that's very, very intimate. It's a lot of fun.
Thank you. Some of you guys work the bench, but not all of you do, right? And Mark's not at the bench, but all three of you are at the bench. How does the use of material affect, you have an idea of a design in your head. Working with platinum is different than working with gold or silver or any other material, raffia. How did or does material play a role when you're designing a project, whether it's for, let's speak in terms of these projects. How did the material influence your design thought process?
Not at all.
Why?
Not at all. From my vantage point, any material, if it is forged, converted, and manipulated into something beautiful, is a worthwhile material. So to me, a piece made in platinum, forgive me, Kevin, or a piece made in copper are as valuable, depending on the amount of work and the taste level in making something that's beautiful. So to me, the materials are totally unimportant. And I'll give you a little anecdote. Before I was in business, I used to work for as a young man, used to work for different companies. One of the firms that I used to work for was David Webb. I spent 5 years at David Webb. And traditional jewelers are very, very intent on the quality of the stones, and this is the best stone, I'm using the best material for my work, blah, blah, blah. David Webb didn't care. He would take a big green stone, which was an emerald, with so many inclusions in it that a gemologist would run away. And David would say, it's a beautiful thing. What the hell is the difference? We're going to make something beautiful out of this. And we did.
That's an unusual influence in the jewelry industry. You were going to say something, Whitney.
From my vantage point, materials have their own unique properties, and I try and use each of those materials honestly. So you can mix, as Jose said, you can mix the emerald with the inclusions because that's a beautiful element, and if you use it honestly and don't try and cover up this and that, that's valid to be used in jewelry or art or anything. So the materials, especially from the bench, the materials have their own qualities that can do this. Platinum is excellent for very fine, intricate, strong style of jewelry. And gold, more of a lush, sort of a broad surfaces, more kind of a design element you can use them for. So I try and look at each metal and use them for that reason, for the color in the composition of the jewelry piece.
I wanted to share that I am more retail in my business approach today than I am wholesale. However, spending like 25 some years in the wholesale industry and creating collections and considering what metals and price points and the things that really identified my work, the elements, which were colored stones and unique gemstones. So it's a huge difference in the approach. As someone creating collections, you're looking at the gems you're going to use, in my case, and then considering what color metal. For instance, I worked quite a bit in 18-karat yellow gold, but it wasn't yellow gold, it was green gold. Well, it's not really green, but it has that tinge of color that I really needed to complement the gems that I had selected to work with. And as Mark put it so beautifully last night, you're framing a gem. You know, you become symbiotic with it. You're not overpowering it, and you must give it the stage it deserves, but you don't want to lose yourself in it. So I thought metals were really important, and the elements. When in the early 90s, whenever that happened, Kevin, that the Platinum Guild came in and destroyed the gold, I went, what am I going to do? It was like all of a sudden I'm a gold girl and I've got to move into white, the white light, or I'm out. And I really didn't know what I was going to do because I had not worked much in platinum. I had a phenomenal friend, Stephen Kretschmer, who was knocking it out in platinum, and we talked a lot about that, and I'm still very closely affiliated with the Kretschmer line today because Claudia has continued the business, and my son Josh is vice president of Kretschmer now, so he's always sharing with me their innovative things that they're doing in platinum, and I contract to them. So I have the pleasure of working with the Palladium and the Plat S+, that very strong platinum. But I still am sort of in my heart a golden girl, so I'm bringing the platinum in as an accent often to what I'm creating.
Well, why do you associate with gold so strongly?
I don't know. I believe we're very connected to the elements of the earth, all of us as human beings. We choose gems on a particular day that I don't know if you've had this experience. How many of you have? I'd love for you to raise your hand. Where you get up in the morning and you're getting dressed and you say to yourself, you're almost out the door, and you go back because you just have to have this particular scarf, or you have to have this particular piece of jewelry on, or you literally take a piece off to put a different one on, not because of how it looks, but because you needed to wear it that day. It's an amulet. It's something that you need to have close by. Am I crazy, or how many have that?
Well, you might be crazy.
Yeah, I am crazy. Okay, don't say anything. Okay, shut up, Whitney. I told him I'd say that for sure, so I had to do it. Anyway, so I was challenged by this new metal that I was to work with, and I found the beauty in platinum, like you were talking about, unlike I knew before. And there's no going back. I just think it's amazing. The contrast, I think platinum complements the rich golden tones of gold. And I think gold brings out the beauty of the platinum. So that's just my aesthetic.
Well, I think the four of us are more into the design than the material. To me, it is the design. I start out with a white piece of paper and a pencil, and the design is important. I love platinum because it has qualities that you can't get in white gold. And whenever I have a client that has the budget or the gift of an ounce of platinum, I love working with it. It's the most precious metal on the earth. I would like to think that my work deserves to have the highest degree of quality of material and elements. You can design with platinum a lot thinner because it's a different metal to work with, which you can't do in gold. You can make things in platinum that will hold up for the ages, that if you tried to make them in gold, they would not hold up. Everything that I do in white gold, we put a rhodium finish on it. I don't have to do that with platinum. I like to work with tanzanite a lot. Movie last night. There are certain stones that I love that look better in white metal than they do in yellow. And I agree with Susan. I do like contrast. My work primarily either has two textures on it, a high polish and a satin finish. I like contrast in color of stones, as you saw with this piece, with the coral, the blue lapis, the diamonds, the white, and the yellow. To me, that excites the eye. When somebody looks at a piece, it challenges you to look at it more closely because of that type of detail. So when I can afford it, or when my clients can afford it, platinum is a metal of my choice.
So you said it had qualities. Well, I guess you spoke to them, the fact that it's very strong, you can go very thin.
Oh, yeah, there's certain things you can do with platinum that you can't do with white gold or any other metal. And the alternative of silver is not even... Silver is a beautiful metal to work with, but it's very soft. It oxidizes. You know, platinum does not oxidize. It holds its finish. There's different alloys that we talked about, or was discussed yesterday, the different alloys you can put into it now that can make it just... You can do a lot more things with it. To get off the path a little bit, how many went to Russia? We do a retreat once a year, and when we can, we go out of the country. And we went to Russia, how many years ago?
It was about 4 years.
4 years ago. What was really interesting about that experience, we took pieces that we made, and we had a showing with Russian jewelry designers. And we toured a school in Russia. And that school had no jewelry benches, no equipment. Were you there, Susan? No. Whitney? Oh, I'm sorry. It was quite an experience. It was all theoretical because these people, it was just when the Iron Curtain came down and jewelry was not important there. And then we had a showing with these people because they showed us their jewelry. We had a cocktail party and things, and we're there with platinum pieces and gold pieces and what we did. And they came with paper, copper, plexiglass, and it was mind-blowing because their designs were fabulous, but with no material. So that was an interesting experience that I got to because of this group.
Very cool. Do we have time for a couple questions, Lisa? Have any questions for these folks? This is Teresa Freya coming up to ask a question. She knows more about platinum than just about anybody.
If you look, say, 5 years down the road in your design, what would you think would be the next thing for platinum?
Well, I think the technology of working with it, I don't know if the technology of working with it is kept up with the changes that you're making in the material. The science part of this industry is just going so fast. And as a designer, it's hard for me to keep up with it because I still like making handmade jewelry. Hate to say it, but I'm not a CAD/CAM fan. I still like drawing. I still like hand-carved waxes, and I still like to make things by hand. But I'm looking forward to the change in the technology of working with it that would make it easier for us as designers to work with the metal.
Do you see the consumer pushing towards anything that might be new? Because I'm always wondering, as a manufacturer, I really respond to designers like yourselves, and I'm just wondering what's the consumer, not terribly far downstream, but the millennials, I guess, is what I'm talking about. Where are they going with platinum?
I have an idea. I think the purity of platinum is very important to the millennials and to us, as it has been. But your technology combined with the spirit of the future, which is, for instance, your hipping process, which densifies the metal, which it creates all sorts of usage, because when it's densified, it's heavier and stronger. And because of that, we can make finer things. For instance, with all the piercings and all of the things that seem to be so popular right now, I think many people wear nickel-based piercings. But I can see in the future that platinum could play a role because it's very fine, but they'll be able to feel it. It will be able to hold the form that they want. For those that are reshaping their bodies through piercings, I mean, it's really an amazing time there with what they're doing with their earlobes and what have you.
And
So,
purely hypoallergenic.
yes,
too.
totally. So I can see platinum playing a role, and it's also affordable for the first time. Because as a retailer, I was going to mention that I have people coming in with a budget, and I have to think budget and yet not make them feel like we're doing that, because they're coming to a designer for a specific reason. They don't want something out of a case. So I'm working with them on design, and I have to charge them for that, as well as the materials. And so catering the right material to the retail client and fulfilling their vision within a budget is tough. But I now can use platinum more because the price point is so great. And because you are doing things and Kretschmer are doing things to perfect the beauty and the integrity of the metal itself, we can make things smaller, lighter, and still maintain the strength.
Well, this isn't.
More design question. The 3D printing of just a wax model, I'm not talking about metal because I don't think that's really ready yet, but if you just take the design flexibility from a 3D printed wax model, there's really been huge leaps. So you can design amazing things that are far more complex than anything else that you could have designed when you were hand carving and even master modeling with rubber molds. Do you see that in your own businesses as a tool that you would continue to use with greater frequency?
You mean in terms of growing waxes?
The 3D printed wax models
Yeah.
that you can break down into as many pieces.
Already doing it.
Yeah, well, certainly the 3D printing has, revolutionized my earring business, because there's one thing I hate is making a duplicate, a mirror image of something I've just made. So if you model it in 3D, you can just flip the design and print it out. But it's not all it's cracked up to be. I mean, the resolution and the actual work that you have to do to get that 3D model into a jewelry, into the resolution and the quality that a jeweler looks at is still a lot of handwork.
And it's changing every year.
Yeah, it's
I've been a
better
skeptic
and better.
of the surface finish for a long time, and I can say in the last year the needle has moved.
Teresa, I got a little answer for you. The CAD system, of course, is some view it as a curse. I view it as a blessing. But it can't just be the wax that comes out of a file. The whole idea of this is that you utilize the CAD to create a wax. But you shouldn't think that that is the finished product. And what I do, ordinarily, the first thing I do when I have the wax is I try to make it less perfect than it is. The waxes are too precise, too angular, too cold. And by manipulating the wax, you can eventually come out with a piece that looks like it's made by hand. And the reality is that if you were able to use the beginning wax to save time and effort, why not? If the end product is beautiful.
Well, and I think I'll leave us on that note with an interesting conundrum that faces jewelers right now, which is as the technology is advancing fast enough to mechanize more of the work, the buyers coming up, the young people growing into their jewelry purchasing ages, are not so very interested in things that look mechanized and perfect and identical from piece to piece. So we're seeing a reemergence of people who want to buy jewelry as art, not something that looks like it was made in a Chinese jewelry factory. And I think that's something that our designers have to struggle with, is that sometimes the wax is too perfect when you grow it instead of carve it. So I want to thank these panelists. They were wonderful. I want to thank Lisa very much for putting this together and for being such a big supporter of the AJDC. And thank all of you. You guys should check in with Susan and take a look at that ring, and also just check out whatever jewelry they may have brought with them, because it's really exciting to see.